and welcome to the TMC Newsroom. My name is Rich Tehrani. Thanks for watching. On our program today is Dirk Gates. He's the CEO of Xirrus. How are you, Dirk?
Doing great. Thanks for having me in.
We are delighted to have you, and I've got to say I've been a big fan of all of the products that you've been involved with for the last 15 plus years, including being the CEO of Xirrus, where you made some amazing connectivity products for laptops that we used here at TMC.
Yep, Xirrus was a great ride. Had a lot of fun throughout the 90s building products that would connect notebooks to networks. In fact, we had the vision back as early as '93, 17 years ago, that the world would someday be wireless. We introduced our first wireless LAN card in 1993.
And that's the vision that you are now following now, and you're making that a reality based on what we've talked about, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, I had the vision 17 years ago. You can argue I was ahead of my time, but back in this decade, back in 2004, started Xirrus with the notion that someday that vision was going to come true, and we'd go from every few people having a Wi-Fi enabled device to everybody having a few Wi-Fi enabled devices. We're there today, and the notion was that in 2004, looking at it, we didn't have infrastructure. We didn't have the ability to support all of those Wi-Fi devices. We needed to come up with a new way to deploy Wi-Fi in the enterprise, in the world in general, to support the explosion in devices we were seeing. And the product concept really was borrowed from another industry. If you look around, the cellular industry had to solve this a decade earlier when there was an explosion of devices. How did we do this? And the simple answer was by ganging up radios in cell towers. You drive around town, you don't see a cell tower with a single radio on it. Every time you drive by, you're going to see a number of radios, usually arrayed in a circular pattern with sectorized antennas, each covering a different part of town. So the concept, the product idea behind Xirrus was, how do I bring the cellular tower concept indoors and make an indoor Wi-Fi cellular tower? And that's exactly what a Xirrus array is. It'll have up to 16 integrated access points for Wi-Fi, all arranged in a circular pattern with sectorized antenna, giving you far better coverage and far better capacity because of the number of radios you have in your environment.
And we have one here. When we moved it in, we installed it, and it's worked flawlessly for us over the last 6-7 months that we've been in our new office. So I've got to thank you for giving us great connectivity at TMC. I think it was out in your office a year and a half or whatever it was ago, and it was right when 802.11n, the standard, had become ratified. And so now that seems to be the standard that's allowing much of this vision to take hold, correct?
Yes, that was the kind of last piece of the puzzle. We had to get data rates in the air that were better than the traditional data rates on the wire. And the majority of the enterprise today, still 2/3 or more, are still using 100 megabit Ethernet to their desktops. With 802.11n, this latest standard, you get 300 megabit data rates to the desktop. So now we're in a position where wirelessly I can have better data rates, better throughput than I can on wire. And that's the last piece that will allow enterprises now to truly think about going all wireless and eliminating the cost associated with cabling up each of their users in their environment.
Now, we discussed a little bit earlier that I had mentioned there are so many high bandwidth applications now, such as video and HD video and telepresence and personal telepresence. And I had requested from you whether you still believe that you can be wireless in an enterprise and fully wireless. And I said, do some enterprises need to be hybrid? And you had an interesting answer, which I'd love for you to repeat.
No, and I absolutely believe, and we're seeing it, we're living it today. There are a number of different applications and customers we have that are proof points. Some of the most challenging customers we have are schools, whether they're K through 12 or universities. You get a K through 12 school, they'll roll out 30, 40 laptops per classroom, multiple classrooms, and have all the kids watching videos simultaneously. It's being done today with Xirrus technology, with 802.11n, and it works perfectly well. Even more challenging, go into a university environment, install Xirrus devices in the dorms. Dorms are extraordinarily challenging. Starting about 9 p.m., going to about 3 a.m., the amount of traffic that these college students drive with videos and they're torrenting, is amazing, but it's being done all wirelessly. The kids wouldn't even think about doing it any other way. And probably in an even more challenging environment, the Microsoft Developers Conference. Here we have Microsoft using Xirrus devices, 3,000 people in the same room. These are developers, all with their laptops out, all on the network, simultaneously, 4-day conference, no trouble.
Wow.
It can be done, it will be done. You'll see the entire enterprise going wireless.
And we know that even if that wasn't the case, that you're seeing people using wireless in some cases, we've got devices coming out, smartphones, and we've got iPads that don't really even have wired connectivity. So even if people want to use wired for some of these new devices, I know that here at TMC we've got a bunch of iPads that when you're back at your desk, you can't even dock it anywhere. You basically you're using the Wi-Fi that you have available to you.
Unfortunately, today there's no need. And we've got a generation of kids and college students that are going to be coming up that won't even know to look for a wire. They've been wireless their entire life. So the good news is the technology is there and it's working beautifully.
My daughter's 6, and I remember recently she took her iPod Touch out of the house and was in the car and was asking me why she can't get something from YouTube. So everyone at some point, I guess, has to get that conversation as to why the internet stops working when they leave the house.
Yep.
It's kind of interesting. So I've lived that. You mentioned education is one of the areas that you're focusing on, and obviously trade shows as well, where you have thousands of people congregating. What other areas are you focusing on?
Sure. We've been focused on some of the traditional early adopters of Wi-Fi technology, guys where Wi-Fi becomes mission critical. It's an important piece of their business. Healthcare, hospitals, certainly. Manufacturing is another place where much more convenient to do things wirelessly on the manufacturing floor. Retail is another case. So increasingly you're seeing a number of these highly mobile or at least highly reconfigurable businesses move to Wi-Fi and completely eliminate wire. And I think over time that'll happen through the general enterprise as well.
It sounds like your product's a perfect fit for any enterprise. I mean, we're a great example. It seems that just the growth of all of these devices that we've been talking about, mobile devices, has been in part responsible for the phenomenal growth numbers that you've experienced, right? You're having 100% year-over-year growth a couple years in a row now, right?
A couple years in a row, yeah. 09 over 8, and doubled our business. We're on track to do it again this year. And I think you're right. It's the explosion in the devices, the iPhones, the Droids, the iPads, that is driving the enterprise to figure out how to provide the same connectivity in the office day to day that people have come to expect at home.
Right.
And whether they want to or not, there's a revolt on their hands. These employees are going to demand to have the same service and coverage at the workplace that they're so used to at home now.
Sure. And we know that certain carrier networks are just not up to snuff on providing the bandwidth that is needed for these users. So you really have to augment it in some way to keep your workers as productive as they can be.
And not only they're not up to snuff, they're actually looking to Wi-Fi, and certainly in the workplace as well as home, as an offload. They're trying to limit the amount of data traffic they have to support in their networks, and Wi-Fi is an excellent way to do that.
Now, at this point in your company's growth, you've decided to expand the way you sell your products, correct? So can you tell me a little bit about that modification to your business model?
Sure. When we got started, the company started in 2004. We spent 2 or 3 years developing and polishing this technology. It was non-trivial to figure out how to build these indoor Wi-Fi cell towers, if you will. But for the last 3 years, as we started selling the product, we chose to have a purely direct sales approach in the U.S. because we basically needed to have proved the selling techniques. We needed reference accounts. We didn't have a brand of any sort to speak of. And at the time, going after partners to help us sell would be difficult. It was a difficult challenge to get their attention and to be able to show them how successful we can be. We now have that success under our belt, and we're looking to continue to grow and continue to scale and continue to manage this 100% year-over-year growth. To do that, we're now going back out to partners. We're bringing the product to the partner channel here in the U.S., looking for them to actively help us sell the product. I think we have a lot to offer, both from a technology point of view and from a programs point of view.
Now you also have a guarantee as well, which is unusual in the industry.
It is very unusual. What we've been able to do because of the way we've developed our technology, it makes the time to do an active site survey, actually set up the equipment, see how it's performing, see what the reception levels are in the environment, makes the time to do an active site survey an order of magnitude less than with traditional and an older equipment that looks more like your home-based Wi-Fi. Because of that, we've been out to date being very proactive, making sure we do an active site survey in every install, and because of that, we've been able to offer our customers a guarantee, saying we know how it's going to perform, we're going to install it. If for some reason it's not performing the way it looked like in the active site survey, we'll fix it, no charge to you. We're going to offer that same capability through our partners. Train our partners to do those same active site surveys, and if they do this active site survey through this certified program and they install it correctly, then we'll basically cover the partner, saying if anything pops up, if there's a hole, we'll provide the equipment, we'll keep the partner whole, we'll keep the customer whole, and we think that's a huge differentiator. The partners we've talked to, that's one of their biggest complaints they get from customers with Wi-Fi installations, is that it doesn't perform the way they were told it was going to perform.
Sure.
If you do a predictive survey, if you just kind of guess where these devices need to go, inevitably you're going to have holes, you're going to have dissatisfied customers.
Sure.
And the partner is usually the first guy, they're on the front line, they're the one blamed for that. Working with us, certified active site survey, we'll guarantee it, they're happy, customer's happy.
And there's few things as frustrating as not having that wireless connectivity once you're used to it on your various devices. And some devices won't switch to 3G if they have a very weak Wi-Fi signal. They'll just kind of hang for you. So that requires the user to go in and maybe turn off the Wi-Fi. And this is something I do quite often when I roam around outside this office and I go different places. I have to deal with turning off the Wi-Fi and going to 3G and then maybe going back to Wi-Fi. So I think users have to get so involved and it's frustrating for them.
Right. Wi-Fi becomes very addictive. And as we both mentioned earlier, it becomes something that's just taken for granted. And in the home environment, you're used to having a very rich Wi-Fi environment with very little effort. It takes a lot more effort to replicate that in the enterprise. And it is addictive. And what you want to be able to do is provide an experience where anywhere inside your four walls, you have good Wi-Fi coverage so that the end user customer doesn't have to think about it.
Now, you mentioned something to me earlier about a concept called time to value, which takes into account some of the things we've discussed regarding the site survey. Specifically, what is that?
Time to value is when I'm a customer or if I'm a partner selling a solution, how quickly can I get it installed, make it operational, and provide value to the customer? And with large Wi-Fi implementations, these are things that have traditionally been rolled out over quarters or years. It's not unusual to find a large enterprise customer who's thinking through a deployment plan that could span 1 or 2 years to get Wi-Fi properly deployed throughout their facilities. We're able to come in, and because of the fact that we're using this cellular tower approach where we're putting a lot of radios in one device, you end up with 75 or 80% fewer devices that have to be deployed, and it makes it far easier to cable, far easier to put in the back-end switching infrastructure to support it, and the install times go down sometimes by an order of magnitude. So projects that you were thinking about spending millions of dollars to deploy Wi-Fi over the course of a couple of years can now be deployed and operational in 60 days, 90 days, less than a quarter. And that becomes a huge competitive advantage we find when we're out talking to customers and partners. Partners get paid faster, customers see value, they get an ROI on their investment quicker, and it becomes a significant decision point for them when they're considering different approaches. It's just so much simpler to install, but they also get to get value from it much quicker.
That's great. So you've obviously innovated a great deal in the last decade and a half. You had this dream, and you're making it happen. What's next? Now that we're on the cusp of seeing this happen, what is the next big thing we can expect from your company?
Well, the big thing we're working on now is just getting the word out further and working through partners to get the product deployed more widely, really try to bring these benefits to a larger group of people. We're really focused on just growing the business as best we can, keeping our 100% customer satisfaction rolling as we go forward, and just growing the business. We'd like to, if we can maintain this doubling of business year over year, great. That's really our focus.
Well, congratulations and thanks for being here today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.